All right, it's going to be an exciting night, I think, at least to me. I've been looking forward to this. We're going to experiment for a bit with different angles on electronic music. My name is Joel Antgoor. I'm the founder of Awake Origins, which is a platform about the raising of consciousness amongst humanity. So why then a musical night at the Amsterdam Dance Event? Because I think that music is a very profound and powerful tool to get closer to yourself, to connect to yourself, to connect with others, to connect with nature, and also to celebrate life. And I think all those aspects will be in this evening tonight. We're going to have several performances by an awesome lineup of DJs, at least I think. But before we dive into their music, we're going to get to know them a bit better. So I'll start by calling them out. Our first guest of tonight. As a kid, he played classical guitar. He grew up with rock and hip-hop. However, he ended up as an explorer of magical dimensions in the electronic realms. And he's able to produce dreamy sounds as well as proper techno. I've been following his music for many years now. I'm really excited about his newest work. And I'm looking forward to his show tonight. Can I get a very warm welcome for Ryan Davis? Our next guest, when she was 12, she bought her first house record. At 16, she was DJing in the hottest club of the Netherlands, and soon she found herself touring the world. She's globally seen as one of the first female pioneers in electronic music, and I've gotten to know her as a very wise human being who has a true purpose in what she brings to the dancing floor. Throughout her years, the DJ sets and her own music have evolved. And tonight she will be treating us on I think it's going to be an amazing special show together with Moses, a singer, instruments and dancers. Can I get a very warm welcome for DJ Isis? And then our last guest. He's a producer, DJ, forester and birdwatcher. His music is nature-inspired and all his tracks have the names of animals, birds. About a year ago I did an interview with him, and beforehand I thought, okay, is his public image, is it real? Well, when I met him I saw it is real and it is even more than that. To me, he's an amazing example of living your purpose, truly living from the inside out and living an authentic life. Tonight we're going to experience two shows of him. He started with an ambient set and he will be closer with some proper techno tonight. Give it up for Dominik Eulberg. Well, that was a golden oldie of you, right? This track was a golden oldie of you. Yeah. Thank you for co-creating this special night with us. I'm really grateful for that. What I would like to do is, I would like to dive into your inspirations a bit more. So what inspires you in the way you make music? And what do you bring across? Ryan, if I can start with you.
My music is inspired by people, like the concept of your whole evening here. I'm constantly inspired by people, by nature. I use a lot of field recordings in the last years, combining everything that humans made, where humans came from. This is a lot part of my music right now, and also the evolution of digital synths and effects. It's becoming very interesting. So a lot of my comes from all this evolution of electronic music, of how music can be done, how music can be achieved, and this is a constant inspiration.
And how does that work with your field recordings? And you just go out and you start recording? Can you explain a bit to our audience?
Actually you have this very nice mics. There's a field recorder, you can get it in stores, and you go out, you try just to find something very interesting. You go into the woods and you crack some branches of a tree, or you go through the leaves of autumn, and it's making all very interesting sounds, and it's really interesting to implement it in your music. You have all this depth of room already, which you digitally add with all the effects, but in nature with those elements, it's already there. So you have like a spectrum which you cannot or heavily get when you produce digital, and also your ears become more open to when you walk through the street or just somewhere and you hear like something interesting. You say, "Oh, I want to come back to this place and record this and to somehow implement it to your music."
You told me something about your newest track which has a special recording in there. What was that?
Yeah, I'm releasing a track in November, which has a recording of when I visited Colombia, and I was on this hill in the mountains. They have like fincas there, and it's like dark. The sun goes down, and you hear the atmosphere of the whole place. Like you hear the animals and the little sounds and dogs barking from far away, and like a motorcycle a little far away. In this track, it starts with this sunset sound, and in the middle of the track breaks literally down, and you hear. You can like kind of dive into the sound, into this moment that I have been just by listening to it combined with the music that I produced behind it. Yeah.
Awesome. He says, what is for you your inspiration?
Well, I get inspiration out of many things, but since it's Amsterdam Dance Event and we're DJs and producing music, I clearly see kind of a ceremonial ritual going on, and we not all have the chance to dance around fires under the stars, but we get to simulate this situation in our clubs and in our events. Actually, it's kind of a ritual in which we all bond together, and that inspires me a lot because the energy that comes together there, and I think the music plays a very important role. It's not just the hypnotizing aspect of the repetitive element there, but it's also the unity because of the vibration of the sound, and especially also the lack of words sometimes, because it's instrumental most of the times, and that takes your conscious to another level, because as soon as people speak, like now, we're all listening to words which address our language center in our brain, and it kind of blurs the perception. If you have an open mind, you can perceive whatever is there, and if you go through the translation center, you will automatically address all kinds of prejudice you got in your life, or associations, whether they're good or bad, and that will not allow you to inhale what's there to perceive, and it goes beyond the rational or the emotional, and it is more like a holistic way of sensing, I guess. And to me, that is the greatest inspiration of what I'm doing, like the unifying aspect, really.
And how do you get this in your music, that unifying aspect? How do you know if it's working or not?
Everything is, it has its rhythm, So what you do as a DJ, and I guess as a producer you do that on a short term, but as a DJ you try to prolong a certain pattern and weave it into a direction that will bring you to the point you want to arrive at. So depending on what the vibe is, or the starting point of the night basically, or the event or whatever moment you choose to enjoy the music together, it will develop from there, and then you can build up to maybe a kind of energetic explosion or a release of tension, or maybe we'll go through certain waves, and in the end I think it's always best to land together, you know, if the situation will allow it, and well, to me that's the ideal way to work.
You've been around now for more than 25 years DJing. What have you learned throughout those years, and what works and doesn't?
Well, that it's a giving and taking, really, and it's not just transcending something or broadcasting or looking at things from a linear perspective, like here's the performer, there's the crowd. To me it's all one, really, and yeah, that energy exchange that you learn how to first give and then receive, it's a very good starting point to generate energy flow. And if you're younger, you might not realize those things, also because you're maybe brainwashed by all kinds of Western ideas, and yeah, they separate our consciousness basically by not looking at it as a unity or wholeness. But if you learn to remember, and I assume most of us have learned by listening to music to realize what it is, then you can, I don't know, grow in that. And it doesn't just work with music, of course, it works with all kinds of energy events, just a simple meeting between two individuals, or in nature, or with animals, you know, I mean, everything has a frequency, and if you learn how to align it with your surroundings, you can cumulatively, do I say that right? You can grow beyond your own personal peak by joining the energy.
And for you, Dominik, what inspires you? The tracks of the name of your tracks.
Guess what?
you can elaborate a bit.
No, of course. I mean, you visited me. It was 1 year ago, I think so. And he saw how I'm living. I'm living very in the middle of the nature. Very, very small village. It's in a nature reserve, and of course, nature is my big inspiration source. Nature for me is the greatest artist of all. If you look at the variety of colors and shapes, I mean, it's amazing. And I grew up without television and other media poisons. So I have a very free mind and free creativity. And nature was my entertainment system, especially birds and butterflies, when you look at the colors and forms. And I go out into nature and try to be part of it in a contemplative way, without willing to change anything. And then a very deep, happy emotion is coming up in me. You saw it. And when I see a crazy bird, I get really happy, childish astonishment is coming.
I see, and this is true. When he sees a swan, or doesn't matter what it is, he gets excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My favorite bird, for example, is the kingfisher. Also, I saw it a few thousand times maybe, because he's breeding directly in front of my house. Every time I see this flying gemstone, I'm like, oh my God, look at those colors. Wow, it's touching my soul very deep. And so then I go into my studio. My studio is also in my house, in this nature reserve. And then like a picture, like a painter is painting a picture, I try to paint these emotions with my music. And yeah, this is how I make my music, basically.
Because you start out with a certain kind of bird or animal in your head, and then you start creating, right?
Exactly. Like 20 years ago, I started to do field recordings, a little bit like Ryan said. But for me, this maybe you know Hermann Hesse. You know Hermann Hesse. It's steps. Everything has steps in life, and I got bored of this because I sampled nearly every animal. And today it's an indirect way. Like making music is nothing else than selecting out of infinity of options. I can play this note with this synthesizer or this synthesizer. So I have a concept first. Like now I finished the concept of my next album already. It's finished, the cover.
You just released your new album last month, right?
I just released it 1 month, yeah, but when I do music, the artwork and the track titles are finished long time before I start to do music. Because that's very different, because otherwise I don't know what music I want to do, because I mean, there's so many feelings, what do I want to express, and I can tell you the concept of my next album. It's a secret. My manager maybe kills me. It's my last album. I took numerics. You know my album maybe. It's called Manifoldness, Mannigfaltigkeit, because I found to each number from 1 to 12 a species name existing in the native fauna. It's hard to say in English. It's mayfly, it's Eintagsfliege, zweibrütiger Scheckenfalter is a butterfly, and so on. The tree-toed woodpecker, maybe you know this bird. Yeah, and for my next album, it will be called Avichrom. It means bird color, because you can find to each color bird species. Yeah. So the track titles will be Grauspecht, Rotmilan, Blaumeise, Gelbspötter, Grünfink, and so on. And then I have this specific bird in my mind with its habitus. How does it live? How does it behave? Because every species has a different gist. We ornithologists say gist, how it's moving, like the sparrows are jumping with 2 feet, the Bachstelz, I don't know, is walking. And this is relieving a different emotion in my mind. And then I try to interpret this with my music. This is very subjective. So maybe nobody knows that I interpreted a dormouse. It's track number 7 in my album. Yeah, because dormouse is called a seven sleeper in German. Is a rodent. He does hibernate much more longer than 7 months, even sometimes 10 or 11 years. Sometimes they wake up and they look if the trees have fruits. And if they don't have fruits, they continue sleeping, so they sleep 11 months. But if they are awake, they are very serious climbers doing crazy stuff, and they are very, very agile. And this is why the track is very happy track. On one track, Sechslinien Bodeneule, I interpreted the metamorphosis. Yeah. From the egg to the caterpillar to the pupation to the butterfly. And the metamorphosis for me is one of the biggest miracles we have in nature still not very researched, because the caterpillar is dying, it's killing itself with its digestive juices. Like 95% of the animal is dying, only 5% survive, which had no function as a caterpillar, and out of this 5% a totally new being is being created. So it's like a miracle. And this is making something with me. When I think about it, I get very thrilled. Wow. And this giving me the power to do the music.
And do you ever have animals which you thought of something with a number 2, and then you have to make something with number 2, but you find the creative process hard, so that you switch this kind of animal with another 2 in there?
Can you repeat?
So, for example, on your newest album, what
Yes.
was the first track?
Eintagsfliege, Mayfly.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
the Eintagsfliege. So you sit down to create that track,
Yes.
but you, for example, you feel it is hard to feel inspired for the Eintagsfliege, and that you then switch the animal still with the number 1.
Why is
Does it
it
have-
hard to switch? It's
So for you, it's never a problem.
no, for me, every being has its sense. It's a wheel in a mechanism of an ecosystem. It's a gift of God. I mean, I'm not religious, but I don't know how to better say it in English. And it's a being we have to love and we have to be thankful for. So I'm interested in every animal. I'm a very curious boy, and if I have a new animal I work on, I read as much as I can about this animal. So I'm a real expert in this afterwards. And for the example, the Eintagsfliege, I mean, it's living only 1 or even sometimes only a few hours. This is why it's called Eintagsfliege. 1 day flies, German name. And it's the larva is living aquatic, and on one moment it's releasing the water, and you can hear it in the track. The track is very wet, a lot of effects, and suddenly it gets dust dry, and it does not even eat as an imago, as an adult insect, and its gut, yeah, has no function. It's doesn't have even opening, because they don't eat as an adult, and it only stabilizing the insect. So I read much, and I mean, this is inspiring you. I mean, you're also inspired, I see now.
He can talk for hours about. 1 year ago, we did a short tour in the Wester Park about bats. Dominik was. No, in Amsterdam, you did a tour about the bats. Yeah. With a group of people who were clubbing that night, and he just talked for 1 hour about bats. He knows everything about them. That is like every animal. Isis, you told me a story about one of your new tracks, which has a very special field recording as well. Do you want to share this?
Yeah, sure. Well, I do field recordings as well, but this was an accidental field recording, because we're gonna do our new release tonight with Indian singer Sandhya Sanjana and a sarangi player Vincent Suurstra. We're going to be on stage with the 6 of us in total. Anyway, we were recording the singer and a sarangi player, but the window was open. And what I think I recognize from your story, but I've sensed it before, that nature starts to resonate with sound. So, or actually, all sound starts to resonate with each other, maybe I should say. But then, for instance, crickets or birds, they start to sing with rhythm patterns that are coming from a stereo, for instance. And I really had the impression that happened there, because we were recording the singing, which of course is also like And then the birds, they were starting to vibe with the singing, and that all ended up in the recording because it came through the same microphone. So in the song is the bird singing, and yeah, it's really beautiful. It's like the intro and the outro. The birds are very present, and yeah, I love that, how organic and let's say nature and modern technique can be combined in a proper way.
Are we going to hear the birds tonight as well?
We're going to hear the birds.
Okay, nice.
I have to listen which species it is.
I'm sure you'll know much better than I.
But you will know afterwards probably, right? Yeah.
I guess so. I hope so.
So then they can be the co-author on the track on the release. Do you want to, Isa? Do you want to share anything else about tonight's performance beforehand?
Sorry, about tonight's performance.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be like a kind of a hybrid set, so we'll be partly DJing, partly live, or we're doing about 3 tracks. I've been working with Moses Meyer for the past 2 years on our act, Isis and Moses, and we've been releasing music, and we just released a new track. So we're going to play 3 tracks in the end of the set, and then we'll have as well the singer, sarangi player, and our performers on stage together doing it with the all of us. Yeah.
Nice. Brian, do you want to share anything about your performance tonight?
Yeah, my live set that I performed tonight is special because I only performed one live set in the last 4 years before this one. It was last year when I was asked by rival consoles to perform in Funkhaus in Berlin, and I only had 7 hours to perform it because I worked before that night. So it was like crazy getting a new live set going on. But I managed it because I still had the experience of my last live sets a couple of years ago. So yeah, it was a very nice experience, and since then I was looking forward to play live again. I mainly play hybrid sets, so I don't DJ anymore like normal. I also have like synth stuff going on when I play, or I have like drum things, drum racks in my program open, so I can like do something on the run. So this year, this live set is very special. It's just for now. There's a lot of music you would never have heard before. It's not released yet. There's tracks that will probably never be released because I do a lot of music, and a lot of music like stays on my computer. It not comes out ever. So there's some music that comes out, some not. And I have a track, for example, that I played tonight. I did with Max Cooper, but it never came out. But we had a session at my house in the night. So yeah, this is in there. And I also work with granular synthesis tonight. It's grains that are taken by sound. It's not anymore the sound itself, so it's like grains that picked up in one sound wave. So you don't hear like I don't know if you clap in your hand, you hear like one wave. But the granular synthesis is like grabbing only one point of it, and you can like point points in different directions. So this is interesting, and I have space sounds in there from the NASA library, so you hear in the beginning some sounds of Saturn and Jupiter, some echoes of the rings, and it's run through this granular stuff. And I'm having additional to this nature sounds that I have in all of my music now. Mainly is like the last song is like breathing out with like grass sounds and stuff that is also into this granular process. Yeah, so it's a special thing for me to share it tonight with the people that are listening to it.
Now we're going to hear the Colombian experience in there as well?
Yes, it's actually the last song, so you will definitely dive into the Colombian sunset. It's called Nightfall, so you will have the Nightfall experience probably when you listen to it and when it goes out. Yeah.
Cool. And you, Dominik, what can we expect? Well, you have 2 performances, of course, so they can't be more different, I think.
Yes, first I play a very contemplative ambient set. but ambient set in seen as an ambient set. So a lot of people, they say it's ambient, but for me it's not ambient. And I think you're gonna show also some visuals to it. It will be beatless music because it's like a medicine, music like a medicine. Because we know today music is older than speech, and when we talk, only a modern side part of the brain is active. When we make music, the main part of the brain is active. We have a voice which is able to do 3 or 4 octaves. I can't, I won't sing now. But for speaking we only need 1, and people who had a Schlaganfall, was heißt das? What is Schlaganfall? Stroke. People who had a stroke, they cannot talk anymore, but they can make music. So we know that music is a communication tool. And when I do music, I want to communicate with the people. And yeah, the first set I want to bring everybody in a transcendental meditative state. And I think this is a very good way to start a party. Like I hate when I come in a club and there's already hedonistic escapism running. Like I'm also very old school DJ. I DJ since 26 years here now also. And I learned, I've been at Omen in Frankfurt with Sven Feth in the beginning of the 90s. And there was also always ambient running for 2 hours. And then when the first bass drum came, it was so intense. Wow. So it's, I'm a friend of building it up very slow. So I'm looking forward to do this set. I heard some people already came from Bala Bala parties. So it's a good way to reset them, yeah, to put 0 again, to defragmentate the brain also. This will be the aim of my first set. And the second set, I gonna play some tracks of my new album, also some new remixes maybe. We will have wonderful to remix a piece with artists like Mind Against, Recondite and so on. And I start kind of slow, but then, yeah, I mean, we can do some party. You know.
We will have some party,
Yes.
I think. Yeah. Are there any questions from you for these wonderful artists?
Oh, yeah.
Do we have an extra mic?
Like I make a little bit of music myself, and sometimes I find it hard to, like, you're in a certain groove and you kind of like it, but you're not super satisfied. Like, how do you find the balance with not letting perfectionism be the enemy of good enough, but at the other end, like, really reaching your level of quality that you're looking for, if you get what I mean?
For whom was the question?
For anybody who feels...
But then anybody can answer. One minute, okay, I start. Yeah, it's, I mean, as I said, music is nothing else than selecting out of infinity of options. And when are you finished? For me, it's very easy. I make music with Cubase, and I compose as many tracks as the CPU is clipping in the red area and nothing is possible anymore, then I stop. And then I start to arrange the track.
Yeah, I'm not a very experienced producer. I've been making music, but always with other producers, and I personally always do it the other way around. First, I pick something that inspires me, that I really want to hear all the time, and then I decide what should be around it in order to make it, for instance, danceable or another way, coherent story. So yeah, I just use something as a guideline, some ingredient.
Yeah, for me, I think it's if you already have the song and you not get further, you should just let it rest. Basically, a lot of ideas are just coming by playing around. So you have a sketch and you maybe don't want to get further, so you leave it and you go back to it later. Or you have something that you are stuck in, just leave it, or delete something that you don't feel right with. So there's a new idea that can come. Basically, there's like a run of stuff. If you have an idea, it's coming like fast, or you just play around and you don't want to have an idea, so it's just coming by accident. But maybe if something is there, you feel it, and if you don't feel it in the track, you probably should just start over and come back later to the track and not force it too much. Or you really love the track. I had that a couple of times. I love the track, I go back, I go back, I go back. I finish it in 1 year. But basically, it's good to just start new, and sometimes it's even just having a pause while you don't want to have one. Just go away, set your mind on something else, and then in the next moment you're like, oh my god, I have this idea, I have to run back right now. So yeah, this is how it goes with me.
Yeah, and one more tip, try to do the music you can do the best. I mean, a lot of young producers say, look what is popular at the moment, Artbed is popular, Stefan Botzing is popular, and then we have another copy of another copy of another copy, and this is bullshit. I mean, good music only makes sense if you really have something to say, and when you do it intrinsic out of yourself, you do a digestive way. Say it in English, I don't know, umkömmlich. If you do it when the way is the goal, then you're doing it with a lot of passion, and this is the most efficient way, because nobody else can make music than you can do. So do the music you want to do, which is coming out of you.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
Yeah, and Ryan, you even just said before, when we had dinner, you said, I asked you what kind of music do you listen to? And you said, well, I don't really listen to electronic music, I listen to jazz and some other stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. I listen like crazy to electronic music, like over years and years and years. And I think at one point you start to filter more and more. There's something in your brain happening. I think it's when you start out with like having pizza from the supermarket, and then my family was not really into cooking a lot. So when I started to travel around and DJ more in the world, I started to eat like well-prepared food. I got into cooking, and there's a lot more ingredients to it that I haven't known before. And I think it's really hard to go back from that. You can still do it for a small amount, but basically your mind is already set to something, to a taste that you evolve during the years. And so yeah, I also like to rest my mind from electronic music, or let's say dance floor music, oriented music. I like to have classical music and jazz music and all these different varieties in my life, to also be inspired back again what I can combine in electronic music, because electronic music not only has to be functional, that's what you see in the big sales of the parties, but there's a big part beside that which you can explore and which is very interesting.
We had another question, I think, over there.
if you ever write tracks that you actually do not publish at all, you just want to keep for yourself, and why is that? And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is like, there's a lot of feelings that you get from music when you go to a party and when you're there dancing, and then for instance, when I hear your music, it's like you get this uplifting feeling so many times and you feel happy. What is it that your music makes people happy, or would make you feel like in a dark place or sad or something? How do you put those emotions into your music so that you want to transmit that to the people? They're like, they have the same feeling that you have.
Okay, yeah, this is also something evolutionary, why some music is making people happy and why some music is making people sad. We can go to any cultures, even in the Amazonas, people who never saw an iPhone, they can say this is happy music, this is sad music. This has something to do with the hairs in the ears, and this is why we have the Dur and the Moll scale. And I mean, it would lead too far to explain it en detail. But in the past, we have a long-term mind of tones. Another good example is when I scratch with a fork on a dish. What does it make with you? You say, I don't like this noise. I'm very uncomfortable. But why is this noise so uncomfortable? What do you think? Make a guess. No. Why the frequency? There's even higher frequencies, and it's not so loud. Why is this frequency especially so uncomfortable? Pardon? Yeah, not so bad. Yeah, yeah. It reminds us something. No, scientists found out when you look at the spectrogram. I mean, it's not a tone; it's a sound. A sound is consisting out of different frequencies. There's a monkey species, which is still the Nachfahren, was heißt das? Ancestors? Sorry, my English. Ancestors live in Africa. They do this scream, and we know, we human beings, we come from Africa, like 2.8 million years ago. Our ancestors lived in Africa, and there was this monkey. When he did the scream, they know, oh, there's something bad coming, like a tiger. So we saved this in our genes, and this is also saved in our genes why music is making us happy or sad. And when I make music, I use a lot of these tricks to do happy or sad music. For example, how you say when you say a vocal like A, O, U, and I look at the formants, these are the resonance frequencies. It's always a terz or quinte. Terz, how do you say? Terz, quinte. Terz or quinte. So when you play the piano a terz, it's separating you or oh or ooh. So this is very simple if you know it once. When I compose a melody, I use a lot of these evolutionary tricks to make you happy.
Is there music that you write, that you do it, that you only keep for yourself? Music that you create that you only keep for yourself?
Yeah.
Why?
Of course, sometimes I do shitty music on purpose to release some tension. Sometimes I do like trance music or really bumping 135 BPM techno, and it's very healthy to do this because you learn a lot while doing it, and you know it has no purpose, it has to satisfy nobody, and you also have to play around like a child. because then you are evolving. When you only would start to do music and now this has to be a good track, how can you develop something new? You will copy yourself always. So I think it's very important to do music for not releasing purpose.
Do you have the same experience?
Yes.
Yeah, and I also believe that sometimes you're working towards a project and it has a certain theme. It can be the birds or the insects or whatever your theme is, and then you make a track that totally doesn't fit it. Then you decide, well, we'll put it on the shelf, and see if there will ever be a moment that it does make sense to release this. But there's also other things like a recording that's not high quality enough of something you really like, but in the end, if you start working in the studio, you realize like, well, this you can't release. It's just not good enough. But the composition can be good, but then the ingredients don't live up to a certain standard.
And do you also do shitty music on purpose?
No, really, I'm just happy if I can have time to do good music in general.
I like to do it. Yeah.
I sometimes do it with a friend. I have a good friend, and he bought like a setup at his home, and sometimes we just like to mess around, like raps, pitched, and a lot of funky stuff. Yeah. It's a lot of fun, but for me, to make music started out of experimenting and playing around, and I'm happy that I walk this way, not as a lot of other people I think now are influenced by a certain style, and they think they have to work towards that style to have like success or whatever. For me, it was always playing around, fooling around, finding out something new that I didn't know before, or just by doing something weird, something comes out that I did not expect myself. So for me, it's the most important rule to do music, like don't lose the playing around, because that's the fun of it. And if you are too focused on have a certain outcome, then you probably lose some fun in your process, and you might become maybe even boring, because as Dominik said, you start to copy yourself instead of exploring new areas in sound.
Maybe one more thing, this is also why I never use templates. I always start completely new drum sounds, new synth sounds, and a lot of other artists, they use templates, so they open a new project and they already have the Moog bass line, the 808 kick, and so on. So of course, then you can have a result much more quicker, but then you're not leaving your usual path, and this will be very boring. And I always try to explore, to explore my borders, to invent new sounds. Because this is also making a lot of fun, and I do a lot of acoustic recordings. I mean, not in the nature, not animals anymore, as I told you. But sometimes I build like sculptures, and then I throw something inside. Like I build bottles and wood sticks and metals, and then I take a golf ball and throw it inside. And then everything is falling apart, and this is creating micro rhythms like. And this I record and just loop it, and the beat is finished. So yeah. As Ryan said, you have to make when you have fun while doing music. This is good, because then you are in the here and now, and we should be in the here and now. This is why we are here. This is why we're living. To have fun, to enjoy. I always say life is like a candy store, yeah, and it's not to do some shitty work, and also. When you have fun, other people will understand this more. They say, wow, this is good music, because it was not made under pressure or under fear. I don't know how to pay my rent, I have to do a track. You can hear this in this music, and this is what people doesn't want to hear.
They want authentic stuff. They want authentic music.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another question?
Dominik, in your last album,
Yes.
you counted from 1 to 12 with animals in German. How far could you have gone with animals if you had the freedom to go fill another album? And how many animals are there with the numbers?
I don't know. When I work with nature, I only work with native species. With native species, I mean in Europe. I don't like tropical animals. I was thinking a lot about this, why I don't like this. When somebody is giving me a t-shirt and there's a tropical bird on it, and I said, I don't want it. I have very deep dislike against this. I was thinking a lot about this, why I'm such a Nazi there. And I think the reason is that I'm a bit of autistic, I would say. I have to understand everything, and what I can't understand is making me afraid. And in Europe we have 30,000 animal species. I know them almost all. So this is something I can control, and I can categorize very well. And in the world, I mean, in the tropical, there are millions, like we don't know yet, like 12, 30 million species, and this would make my brain dead, you know. And yeah, but to answer your question, the thing is, the autonomy of animals, it's always mirrored, yeah, like a bug you can cut in the middle, it's mirrored, bird mirrored. So it's much more easy to find animals with numbers, with the 2, 4,
Even.
How?
Even numbers.
Even numbers, thanks for the word. To find animals with even numbers. And this was the reason why I stopped with number 12. Because I didn't found a bird for number 13, an animal for number 13, and then I stopped. I'm pretty sure, of course, for number 14 I would have found a ladybug or so, but I thought it's enough. Also, for a lot of numbers I found very different species, and I had to select for one. And also on one animal I cheated a bit. Maybe. Exactly. Number 11, it was also the problem with the mirroring autonomy of the animal building structures. And 11, it's called Elfenbein Flechtenbärchen. And 11 means 11 in English, but Elfenbein is, what's in English? What? Ivory. Ivory, yeah? I don't know, maybe.
That should mean something else.
How's it in Dutch?
Elfen, you said, right? Well,
Elfenbein, like the elephants have the teeth.
Oh, elephantbein. Okay, I understood elfenbein.
What's the English name? Tusks? No. Yeah, but the material. Ivory, yeah, okay, ivory, yeah. So I cheated a bit here. Of course, there would have been the 11-point ladybug, of course, but I already used it for number 10.
We're going to the first performance now. Dominik, is there anything you'd like to share before you start with your more ambient performance? About your performance?
I don't know what visuals you will show.
I don't know either. It's all Frauke is the DJ tonight, so we'll watch
maybe one more thing. I think they will show the insects. Will you show the insects?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Yeah, there's a few sentences I want to tell you about the insects, because I did raising awareness videos for insects, because basically we're living on a planet of insects. Insects were the first animals on the land 400 million years ago, and 80% of all species are insects, and they are very, we should be very thankful, because they're very, doing a lot of services in our ecosystem, which we benefit from every day. Like the air we are breathing is made out of plants, but the insects, they are building up the soil, they are building up the shit. I don't know how to say. And yeah, but we are not treating them with the respect they are served. We are smashing them with a newspaper on the breakfast table. What the fuck? And this is why I took some photos of insects on eye level to show the individuum, and this is should correct the displaced position we have on them. That is something where you can that you can have in mind if you see them. Don't say a spider or don't like. Look into the eyes of the animals. Try to connect with them from being to being. You are a being and the insect is a being. Try to connect with them and look what it makes with you.
Thank you. Can I get a big applause for